Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior corporate executive from UAE, Dubai, Amnah Ajmal. Amnah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Amnah is the Executive Vice President, Market Development, EEMEA of Mastercard. She has been recognized, awarded, and felicitated several times as the top woman in financial technology. She has lived and worked in Asia, Europe, North America, and the Middle East. So, Amnah, let's start with asking you a question about your journey to the top. What did you do right, and what have been your learnings and challenges?
Sure. I'm not sure if it's the journey to the top, but thank you for your kind words. So I started my career as a traditional banker around 19 years back.
Mm-hmm.
And, the world has changed so rapidly that I had to unlearn what I knew and reinvent myself. And my learning from my journey is that it's important to reinvent yourself every now and then, A humility is surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than me, and to be able to disrupt yourself, because if you can't disrupt yourself, if you can't reinvent yourself, you can't drive innovation in today's time.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I was comfortable, I wanted a change. And fortunately, I worked for organizations and for great leaders who presented me with those opportunities. Having lived in 12 different countries across different continents, changing industries from banking to technology, all of this helped me to be the leader who I am today. What did I do right? I remember when I was being interviewed at my university campus by Citibank, I was asked where I would like to be in 5 years. I think this is a typical question that every interviewer asked. And my answer was, I don't know. However, I do know where I want to be in 15 to 20 years in my life. Because I always had a dream and a vision of what I wanted to do with my life.
Right.
I wanted to break away from the traditional family that I came from, where women's source of identity is the man in their life, the father, the brother, the husband, the son. And people often define poverty as lack of access. I would say I belong to a wealthy family, but yet poor because I did not have access to my dreams, So I always had this vision of a 15 to 20 year plan, which to many at that time, when I was 18 years old, around me sounded stupid, right?
Okay.
But I froze my vision at the age of 18 that I want to have financial independence. I want to have my own identity. I want to get a good college degree from somewhere in the UK or US. And I approach them every day, like this is the day, and I have to fight some battle to break from the cultural and traditional social norms where I was. But my vision for the 20-year life was frozen, and that's where I wanted to be.
Amazing.
Learnings are many, but I think if I have to count two of my top learnings, I would say when I got my first big job of running a P&L at Citibank's largest cards business in Europe, I was in my 20s.
Wow.
Most people who had that kind of a role were in their late 30s or 40s, right? Someone took a risk on me and thought I would be ready for that job, 100%. I thought I wasn't even ready, 20%, right? But that leader taught me what leadership is all about, making people believe that they can do things which people even themselves don't think that they could do it. I never thought I could do that. And I believe in it very passionately because I was just taught so early on. And then how you gain respect from the teams you work with. You show up in a country, you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you look different from them. You do not have the credentials of the years of experience. I'm talking about 20 years back, people used to view roles like that, right? And secondly, I was very uncomfortable with my own story. I was not okay to share my vulnerable side, where I come from. And once I was okay with my own vulnerability and to share my true story, I just realized that the connection that I built with people as a leader was so deep and was incredibly long lasting. So those would be my important learnings and the challenges.
Amazing. What a fabulous response. Thank you. So Amnah, let's now move to the work that you do in the world of fintech. Let me ask you the first question, which is that how do you see the credit card business evolving in the digital world?
It's very interesting because I grew, like I started my career at Citibank as a credit card product person. When I look at the world today, wow, you know, I mean, the barriers to entry for consumers are very low in today's digital world. It's no longer about what the product offers, but how you experience that product, right? Consumers want simplicity. Of course, safety is a given when you're talking about a payment product. Choice. They don't like to call anymore. It's as simple as that. From acquisition to servicing, everything has to be done digitally. It's no longer about just the feature of the card or the reward value proposition, which used to be the case years back. It's simple to understand consumers' behavior when it comes to banking products by looking at your own lives, right? They prefer to WhatsApp than to call. I mean, why do I need to call my bank? I don't think so. 15 years back, somebody would have challenged that. It was great that you could call. I remember banks used to advertise that, IVR, 24-hour phone banking. It was a big thing. It was like a cool innovation. Now people are like, why do I need to call? I mean, why can't I chat with my bank?
Correct.
Paying to my friends, why can't I do social media payments? So I just think the whole view of the credit card business is going to be more around the experience, the servicing angle of it, as opposed to what the product itself offers. It's just the times we're living in. I mean, even if you have to, it's a simple thing is that even if you have to enter your card number, you're like, why am I doing that? Why isn't my card on file? And I just check out, right?
Yep.
It's those small, simple things, which are really not about the card product itself or the card business. It's about the experience and the servicing around. And I think that's what's fundamentally going on.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And yet, I'm not a card person, but as someone who's been in an entrepreneur and a professional, credit cards are a part of our lives. But today there are so many different payment platforms, all available on our mobile phone. I wanted to ask you, how do the credit card companies reinvent themselves? How will they keep pace with this innovation?
So, the first thing about innovation, and this is my humble view, is that it's about having a long-term view of your business, right? And most of the time you're geared towards this quarter result, this year result. And I get that, that's how corporates are.
Yeah.
But some innovations would pay off in the short run. Many would not pay off even in our lifetime. Maybe the next generation will see the benefit. So it's very important to have an optimistic view of the future and make decisions with that forward-looking mindset. I love this quote: if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. Whether it's any regulation or whether it's any new change coming up, like open banking, asking banks to, have this open API to be able to share the data, which, financial institutions have guarded it because it's truly their asset and it differentiates them, right? All that may look at this point in time, maybe it's difficult. But at the same time, it presents a massive opportunity. It's that optimism with which you need to look at innovation. I think that's the first, very important. The second, I would say, is to look into collaboration models that can exist between large traditional financial institutions and the smaller fintechs. In a very simple view, if you look at a large traditional organization, they have the consumers, they have the data, and they have the scale, right? Fintechs go deep into one problem and solve it beautifully, but they do not have the lack of customers. They do not have the scale, and they do not have the data, right? So for me, it's like an ideal marriage. And take a simple thing that I was touching before in our conversation, conversational banking, right? You don't as a bank need to change your core banking system, right? You can work with an orchestration player and you can then plug into a fintech that specializes in the conversational banking, and you can add the service for your consumers. It's the win-win because the fintech gets access to that consumer base that they do not have, right? And it's a win-win for you because you do not have to technically build that capability.
Correct.
And also you get an opportunity to test it, right? In the world of APIs, it's easy to test as opposed to the old days where everything was hard-coded.
Interesting. And, you handle a very, very large market or a region, and a lot of it is developing, some of it is developed. When I look at India and the experience they've had in digitization of transactions, Do you see something similar happening in the rest of the world?
So what I can comment on from my experience across the world is that, you know, people talk about the behavior in consumers post-COVID because COVID was also the new reality of the recent times. 20 to 30% of the COVID-related shift to e-commerce will stick. That's what the research shows us, right? E-commerce growth across countries in this region are at 35 to 40%.
Sure.
Right? But another important factor to understand is that consumers are so open to embracing new technologies. So we would see an accelerated adoption of new ways of banking and payment, be it facial recognition, digital wallets, open banking. I mean, if you just look at the number of digital wallets, they're expected to exceed 4.4 billion globally by 2025. Wow. This number was 2.6 billion in 2020, right? That's the usage of wallets alone. So yes, the global adoption of e-commerce, digital channels, it's on surge. But I think the most important is to understand that the consumer openness to embrace these new technologies is significantly higher. It could be COVID played a role. Like I hear from a lot of colleagues that their grandparents are on Zoom and WhatsApp. That really was not the case before. Maybe it accelerated the change in behavior. It's kind of a level playing field for everybody. But yes, that's the reality. And the new generation, anyways, has more openness to embrace these new technologies.
You know, you spoke about grandparents. I remember 2.5 years ago, I was playing golf, and my caddy just told me, "Why don't you just send me the money digitally to my account?" And I was really surprised. I said, "You know, everyone is now was being empowered." But thank you. But tell me, credit cards have been there for a very, very long period of time, and yet cash continues to be king. Do you see cash being replaced with digital currency and the credit cards?
So credit card is just a means of payment in a digital form, right? As is any other means of payment, be it debit, be it prepaid, be it crypto. Well, I wish and hope so, because it's a massive responsibility and a challenge. I say the responsibility because while having a debit card and then getting access to credit, of course, is one thing, but not being financially included in the ecosystem is another thing. And I think in order for the world to be more balanced and be more equally financially included, there's a huge, massive workforce and SMEs that are excluded right now. And I think with mobile phones, with the data and the use of e-commerce and all of the digital channels. I mean, in Africa, the number of mobile money accounts are greater than the number of banking accounts.
Correct.
With all these kind of trends, definitely I would say that the cash would be replaced. Would it be replaced entirely? I think it's a responsibility for all of us who work in this industry, and I hope so.
Wonderful. There is also a lot of conversations and discussions that are happening on the digital transformation that a lot of organizations are moving to. I'd love to get your thoughts on what is happening.
So I talk a lot about this topic, digital transformation, and my 2 cents is that we focus a lot more on technology. I don't think technology is the challenge. I think it's the culture. It's about surrounding yourself with people who will ask why not, why is it done like this? Because digital transformation isn't about launching a new app or a new product. Many times it's about challenging existing processes and asking why is it being done this way? Why can't we eliminate this process? And I think it's also about a different leadership style. It's about exercising empathy, humility, and curiosity. I mean, all that I studied in my school, and I studied CBOL and Pascal as computer languages, right? They were irrelevant by the time I graduated. But even my experience, for example, with branch distribution or managing phone contact channels and those kind of distribution channels that I managed in my banking early days, it's irrelevant today in today's time. So, I mean, if you say that I want a 20 years experience in artificial intelligence, you would get nobody, right? So I think having that different kind of a mindset to embrace that openness, to
Mhm.
have the humility that I don't know everything. I need to surround myself with this kind of talented people who would challenge me, challenge my way of thinking,
Mm.
and constantly reinventing yourself. And I think that is a massive cultural shift
Mm.
in any organization's digital transformation journey. And I think more time is spent around technology and use cases and ROI and spreadsheets. So I would say that's the crux of it.
Well said. My next question to you is on the young leaders that are coming out now. I mean, I'm from the baby boomers generation. But when you look at the younger leaders who are there, and you're probably one of them as well, how are the young leaders in organizations changing the way you do your business?
It's very interesting because I just love to work with that kind of talent. And I would say when I see even the younger generation, like look at my kids, it's just amazing and incredible. So I give a very small example when I think about it. When we grew up, and I'm actually a millennial, but when I grew up, I'm sure your mom said the same. Don't take sweets from strangers, don't go to strangers' house, don't take a ride with strangers. Right? And just look at the world, the era that we are experiencing. We do take rides with strangers. I mean, Uber, Lyft, Green, we share rides. Airbnb, the model is to welcome strangers into your houses,
Correct.
right? With all your possessions being in that house. We are dropping off our dogs, our pets to other people's houses. We are eating food in other people's dining rooms. So we are like sharing cars and the whole concept of shared economy. So I just think that when this generation, and I include myself in it, we're interested in complete strangers with very valuable possessions of our life. We have to understand that the consumer behavior and expectations have just changed. Technology is just evolving to meet those expectations. I mean, my 4-year-old really thinks and believes that everything can be zoomed in and zoomed out. In her mind, that these two fingers are for zoom in, zoom out, and you can do it literally with everything.
Correct.
So I just think that it's important to remain in touch with that generation because they will definitely define the future for us, right? And when I also look at some of the young talent that's working in organizations, right, I at times see that they would look at a thing that has been in front of us, the process, a product for so many years, and they would just question it. That makes no sense. And all of a sudden, and I can relate to it because when I was working in 12 different countries, like I was most of the time the only expat, right? I come as an outsider and I say, but why is it done like that? And everybody would look at me, why am I asking this question, right? So I just think that the young talent has that curiosity and they have that ability to challenge the status quo, and their expectations is so different just because it's so many ways of, it's not about just banking or financial services, the way we take a ride, it's the way we pay for things, it's the way we're doing online shopping. I mean, it's the way somebody is putting clothes together for us and the fashion mix companies. It's just everything around us has transformed.
Amazing, amazing. So Amna, I've got time for a few more questions, and I'm going to move to 2 or 3 questions for you personally, because my viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little. Let me start by asking you, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
So one would be leaving my house at the age of 21, $20 in my pocket and not looking back.
Wow.
Every time an opportunity came my way, I changed the countries and jobs many times with the same employer though, but I was not afraid of the change. And the second one I would say is when I became a parent. It has changed me forever. And you'll hear that from a lot of parents.
Yep. Moving on, as a professional, what are some of the core values you believe in?
Empathy, courage, humility, perseverance.
Fantastic. And for someone who ran a P&L in her early mid-20s and running such a big region now, what does success mean to Amna?
I would say it has always meant to me that success is something I can risk it and be okay with it.
Mm.
When I left Standard Chartered, I was the youngest consumer bank head they ever had of the largest business.
Mhm.
And I was okay to leave it because I just at that point in time thought that I would not do another round of restructuring. I want to go to a different kind of an industry, right? So success is always something that I know I'm comfortable with and I can risk it. That's how I look.
Fabulous. I have time for two more questions. Who or what inspires you?
My children, nature, and the wonderful teams I work with. I've been very fortunate. I think leadership is a privilege, and I've been privileged to work with such amazing people.
Wonderful. And my last question, based on your amazing experience across such a vast geography of the world, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your own journey and from our conversation?
3 lessons. So firstly, the price that I paid for having a career in financial independence is very high. Very high in a relative world compared to most of the colleagues around me. For the first 8 years of my career, I worked 18 hours every day, including weekends. I had an accident. I went to work on a wheelchair. I had asthma in Cairo when I was living in Egypt. I worked through an oxygen tank. I just wanted to learn much more beyond my job and to make the most of the opportunity, right? And I prioritized my career over my friends, my well-being, my health. And I think as you grow, and now when I look back at it, I think we need to prioritize the health and well-being first. That I would say is a reflection that I have.
Yeah.
A second thing I would say is that your belief is the only thing that stands between you and your dream. When I believed of this life, everybody around me said it's just not possible. Perseverance is the key that can open any door. So that would be the second. And the third I would say is that humility. You never know everything. So just be humble enough to ask the questions and to surround yourself with people who will provide you those answers.
Wonderful, wonderful. Amnah, on that note, and your 3 wonderful lessons, which is have belief, prioritize your health and your wellness, perseverance can get you anything, and ask questions. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your incredible journey. I mean, I'm amazed at how much clarity you had when you were only 18 years old on what you wanted to be. Thank you for talking to me about your journey in the world of fintech. Thank you for sharing a lot of your knowledge that you have acquired over the years. Finally, thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.